victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Penasini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, knocked away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold him!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. No 60s in picture here, and I'll explain that shortly, but joining me to talk football and talk the Parramatta Eels this week is actually a familiar connection. Near and I suppose dear to my heart, it's my brother, Luca. Luca, welcome on to the Tip Sheet Podcast, and thank you for being an emergency contact on this unfortunate day. How you doing? When I say brother, I suppose I mean it literally.
No worries. Thanks for having me. A nice bit of nepotism in action.
Yeah. We always talk about Nepo on rugby league, and it's true for the Tip Sheet too. So the nepotistic call, and then of course there is an unfortunately serious reason why I've called on your services tonight. As everyone knows, Craig would be available for the podcast usually, but everyone in chat has known that his mum has been very unwell for a while, and unfortunately she's taken a serious turn in the last 12 hours. So our thoughts and prayers and all our love go to Craig, and I know everyone in chat's been incredibly supportive of Craig and Noreen, who's such a wonderful lady, and unfortunately doing it really tough right now. So when we get updates, I'll share it with you guys, but in the meantime, I will send him all your love and thoughts because you guys have been so good in that regard. Luca, again, thank you for coming on board, mate, and we will talk Parramatta Eels and the NRL shortly because there is an absolutely loaded docket of mostly NRL news but also Parramatta stuff. But as always, it sucks to go from all the concern for Craig and Noreen into the sponsor shout, but that is how it works with the podcast. And we do want to say thank you to Parramatta Leagues Club and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, who have both been wonderful partners for the Tip Sheet, and I'm sure everyone there would also be sending their love and thoughts to Craig and Noreen. So it is what it is, guys, and you don't want to be callous, but the show does need to go on, and Craig would certainly want it that way. He asked me to go on show and make sure the podcast got out tonight for everyone. So like I said, we will have to wait and see how things go for Noreen in the next 24 hours, but it's tough right now. So thank you to everyone. Like I said, I will pass on those thoughts. Luca, I'm going to hit the stinger for the news, mate, so hopefully it doesn't blast your ears. I know that my soundboard can be a bit weird for your speakers, so let's try and navigate that. But
I'll live.
Yeah, he'll live. For those that want to know, Luca is my younger brother, and unfortunately also a Parramatta Eels fan, cursed to support the blue and gold, both of us having never seen a premiership. But
One day
we'll get there. And we've had our hearts broken multiple times in that span, but we will get there. But yeah, let's put the unfortunate stuff behind us, and for Craig's sake, we'll talk some football and talk some Parramatta Eels.
News team, assemble!
It is the 4th of November as we record this live stream on a Tuesday evening, which means the NRL preseason has gotten underway for the Parramatta Eels, and I imagine the other NRL clubs, we don't really give a shit about them. And the Parramatta Eels did kick off on Monday with I'll say a small core of young players that turned up, Luca. And Craig was out there amidst all the stuff that's been happening with his mother, the tireless work of the years, and he gave us a roll call who was at present for the blue and gold, and it's a couple of senior players or senior-ish players, and then kind of like a who's who of the Parramatta prospects and the pathways. And it'd be interesting to hear some of your thoughts on the Parramatta stuff because you're TCT adjacent, bro, but we always talk football, but we don't really talk about TCT too much.
Yeah.
So we're getting a lot of your Parramatta insights, sort of maybe free of the bias that I would bring.
Any of the good articles come from me.
Yeah, exactly. All the good news, all the good articles are coming from him. But Craig reported on Monday morning that J'maine Hopgood, Riley Smith, Charlie Geimer, Sam Tuivasa, Will Latu, Saxon Pryke, Josiah Funarayuta, Ryder Talangi, Tiankan Brown, Tyrese Lakini, Lachlan Koinakis, Joash Papali, Richie Panasini, Araz Namva, Arpa Tydal, Lincoln Fletcher, Moe Alamadine, and Lorenzo Talatina all reported in for the Parramatta Eels and got through I'll say, fairly intense skill session for day one, where the boys went through multiple passing drills and some skills tests, and they also did a Broncos test, which for those that aren't familiar is a 1.2 kilometre time trial, which Riley Smith broke Quinton Gufferson's record there last year and set a new Eels record, which, as everyone knows, that anything that comes to fitness with the King, getting anywhere near him, let alone besting him, is the stuff of legend. So that's it wasn't a surprise that Riley was able to parlay such a phenomenal start to the preseason last year into a productive NRL debut or rookie campaign, and he's setting the standard again here. So he led the way, but I believe that per 60's report, Araz Nanva, centre/wing in the back line, and Lachlan Koinakis, who was a big rugged dummy half, were also impressive contenders among that Broncos running group. And then from there, like I said, a series of ball drills, sort of testing out the boys and seeing where they are with their footy skills at the start of the preseason. Craig mentioned a few standouts, saying Sam Tuivasa showed some magic in the passing drill, which is always good for a big man. And then in the extras, exactly. Junior Barlow always comes to mind when you talk about nice on nifty hands with the ball. But during the extras, Nathan Brown, the coach, because we do have multiple Nathan Browns in the NRL, of course, but he stepped in to work with the dummy halves and forwards on some stuff around the ruck, while Scott Wisemantle took the outside backs and went through their paces under the high ball. So really nice, if simple start for the Blue and Gold in the preseason. Amongst that list of players, though, a lot of the prospects that, at least on TCT, we're talking about on a weekly basis between the junior pathways and then the Jersey Flag and then the New South Wales Cup. But even with you, mate, I've spoken about a few of them in the past. You've obviously been aware of the rise of Lorenzo Talatino this year, how he went from SG Ball all the way through to the reserve grade team, where we went to a grand final qualifier. Richie Penasini, younger brother of Will. And of course, like guys like Hopgood, Riley Smith, Charlie Guyman, Sam Tuivasa, Joash Papali, more than familiar with in terms of the NRL. It's probably as good a group as we're going to get, because there are restrictions on when players can report in the NRL because of that mandated CBA time off.
Especially with the Pacific Nations.
Yeah, exactly.
Called up.
Representative campaigns always complicate things. We always know that the World Cup is a real pain point for clubs when it comes to reporting for the preseason, and with the expansion of that Pacific Championships and the rise of Tonga, Samoa, PNG, and the sort of investment given into them for players, you're seeing like teams get their star players back later and later, and that's just one of those challenges that teams across the board have to find a way to navigate. And to his credit, it wasn't a short turnaround because it was announced in the midpoint of the year, but in his first preseason, Jason Ryles did a good job of that last year. And I think with the young guys there, it's a chance for them to catch the eyes of the coaching staff without a lot of the pressure of the senior players. But they've still got a really big standard setter there in Riley Smith, who will hold them more than accountable in the athletic conditioning.
100%. Guys like Tuivasa obviously got good game time last year. And if it wasn't for injury, would have had a full year under his belt. Yes.
And so, we get to see the via the lens of what Craig can offer us in the coming weeks. Once, things are a bit better, he can give us some progress on that aspect of a player like Sam's journey. Got some questions in chat asking, no Coiner there, he's a bit young for an NRL preseason, that's from John Rich there, referring to Jackson Coiner, who was the Australian schoolboy that we poached from the Broncos this year. He could still be eligible for a preseason, John, because the Eels don't have either of their in-house Australian schoolboys in the preseason there in Cameron Bambutt and Chris Petrus. They're, again, talking about the sort of the mandated time off players might have. They did play in Port Moresby just a couple of weeks ago as part of that tour to Papua New Guinea for the Australian schoolboys taking on the PNG schoolboys. So they could still be very much in play for the NRL preseason, but they might be still subject to a mandatory rest period. So we have to wait and see in that regard. I see Neil's already on top of that. Well done, Neil. Too sharp, mate. Just trying to think in terms of notable juniors missing. Not too many come to the top of my off the top of my noggin. I think that Jason Ryles has very much brought in the who's who of the pathways prospects outside of the Australian schoolboys that we just mentioned that were not present. So I'm pretty encouraged by that start to the preseason. We've certainly seen that Jason Ryles is not afraid to give a young player a chance to impress and then take that opportunity into genuine first grade playing opportunities or possibilities. So looking at that group, maybe I use surprise very loosely, Luca, but Tiankin Brown, probably one of the least fated players there, but he had a very good year in the front row in the Jersey Flag. The only thing that really bogged him down was a mid-season injury, but he was very productive for the Eels. His running mate, Damascus Nemi, was also very good in the Jersey flag, but not featured here. I'm not sure if that's just a case of not being selected or maybe injured. That might be one of the players you could consider not like a shock absence, but one of the fringe guys that maybe was unlucky to miss out. But aside from that, Funa Ayuta, we've got very high raps on, former Australian schoolboy, likewise Lachlan Quinarchus. Saxon Pryke has been a highly rated prospect inside the Parramatta system for a while now. Tyrese Lakini played a ton of New South Wales Cup this year across the middle, and the agent did a great job. So, yeah, a lot to like in this preseason group, and we have to wait and see how they really hang once the big boys are back. I think that's going to be the telling thing is you want to make sure that they're fit and firing right now, and I think that's going to be the challenge for them because the first NRL preseason is always a shock to the systems because the standard is just that much higher than anything else you've done in your junior career to that point. But once the big boys are back and the physicality really starts to get into the collision, can they hang on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis? Alrighty, so without Craig here, it's kind of hard to extrapolate any more from the preseason report halfway through week one. And once the big fella is back, hopefully we can go into that in depth. But we did have some Parramatta Eels news, mate, in terms of official signings and re-signings. The Jonah Pezet saga, sorry, that's my dog, Rafa. It wasn't so much a will he, won't he, more of a is it 1 year or is it more? And the Parramatta Eels did confirm that the 1 year deal for Jonah Pezet was very much their option, with the Broncos also ratifying a 3 year contract for him from 27 onwards to the end of 29. But Jonah Pezet set to join the Parramatta Eels for season 2026, being a topic of mass polarising opinion. The talk shows have gone on it, other podcasts have gone on it. This show itself has talked about it in length. We've had chat opinions. What are your quick thoughts on it? 1 year deal for Jonah Pezet, 18 NRL games of experience, 12 as a starting half in the Melbourne system. We have obviously Lorenzo Talatona and Lincoln Fletcher who are both present in that preseason and have been noted multiple times by the Eels in the media as stars of the future, or they believe they're going to be stars of the future. So that's the succession planning. But it's been divisive, mate. A 1 year deal for a young half that will go to the reigning premiers now. Was it the right call? Do you like it, or would you have gone a different path?
It's certainly a unique contract, that is for sure. Can't say I'm a massive fan of it. I think it's a bit of a baffling decision, if I'm going to be honest. I can see the idea of it as the tie over half for, as you mentioned, the young guys coming up like Lorenzo, and even like, Josh get more experience and should they see anyone else develop in that time. But personally, I think if you go for that route of a bridge half, could have picked someone with more experience. I know you're a big fan about this, even someone like Cherry Evans or something like that. Not saying necessarily him, but any kind of veteran halves on the market could have been a better option. It could have potentially, I don't know the situation behind it, but trying to keep Dean Hawkins as well for another year. I thought he did a pretty stand-up job.
All of our discussion was framed through the lens of Dean Hawkins being on the active roster for the Eels in 26. And then obviously on the back of that Pezet announcement, on the back of the sort of hype of the Pezet discussion, then the announcement came last week. But Dean Hawkins was announced to be departing the club. So I imagine the club would have been pretty cognizant of the fact that Hawkins was not in the long-term or even the immediate plans of the club after asking for that release to join the English Super League. So that would have obviously galvanised discussions far more. And without Dean Hawkins on the books, I think the idea of Jonah Pezet becomes a lot more palatable. Certainly you don't have a premier backup half or number 2 to Mitchell Moses without Dean Hawkins there. And the expectation is that if Moses were to go down, Pezet would hopefully do a better job than Dean Hawkins in the number 7. And Dean already did a fantastic job relative to his position in the squad. So that is, I suppose, the big quote-unquote upside of having Hawkins on the books, is that something happens to Moses, you're better prepared to cover for it. And that was something that Craig and I certainly discussed at length. As I sort of intimated to Chat and to Craig in the last episode, mate, obviously what's done is done. You can't, if you disagree with it, there's no real point crying about it or getting upset about it. You sort of just move on. But I suppose when is he due back to report? Because he played in the grand final, or was part of that grand final team. Because
I'm not sure what's the mandatory time frame.
Eight weeks? It's around 8 weeks, I think. And he didn't play in the grand final, but was part of that grand final squad because They had Munster and what's his name, Jordan Hughes came back from injury, or was two
But
games
is it from
back.
your last call in from training, or is it from the last game you played?
Yeah, so that's the important detail, isn't it? I imagine it'd be from, if you're part of the active squad, that would be from the last game in totality played. So I wouldn't expect him back for at least another few weeks. He probably comes back in closer to December. Would probably be his report time.
That's a tough thing about a 1 year signing as well. He's got to get little time to
yeah,
get acclimatized to
minimal integration time. Yep, he's got essentially 2/3 of a preseason to get ready to be a Parramatta Eel.
We're not really talking about a veteran playmaker as well, who's got to be quite comfortable working in systems for like 10 plus years, been in multiple clubs. I know we had the benefit of Ryles being from the Melbourne system and knowing Jonah, which should help him get adapted to our style a bit easier, a bit quicker.
Yeah, because there is a lot of Melbourne DNA in the way we play. It's obviously divergent, but there are a lot of similarities, and certainly in the way they approach preparation and preseason stuff, you'd imagine that would be heavily driven by the Melbourne culture. So I imagine he won't take too long to get acclimatized. It's more getting to know the idiosyncrasies and the sort of the personality of the players that you're playing with.
I think it's going to be a lot of, not massive amounts of change, but a lot of change in our roster. There's more young guys getting the opportunity. I think there's spots there for lots of guys got shots at second row this year that really did step up, but they kind of got injured, and other people came
which opened the way for more guys to get in. Yes, it was a bit of a carousel in the second row for the Parramatta Eels. We had multiple guys impress, and that'll be an interesting battle in the preseason as to who gets what sort of time on the edges, and whether guys like Jack Williams might be pushed back into the middle because you've got your Kitione Katongas and your Kelma Tuolungis and your Charlie Dimers and whatnot all vying on top of looking at that group of players there in the preseason right now. You got your Funa Ayutas, you got your Will Latus. There's plenty of back row players, Tyrese Lakini as well. There's a lot of young guys also looking to push in. So
and like at different times in the year, these guys all stepped up and had good periods. Unfortunately, through injury or suspension, they all got rotated through. But I think at times you get a question like, who is going to be the starting back rowers? And that relationship between the half and the back row is a key one. Which, I mean, it's also good for a new half coming when we've got guys rotating. They also get a chance to build up through there. It's not established things that we're deconstructing. So it will be interesting to see how Jonah does all of that and how it goes. I wonder if there's something more to this deal with the Broncos and everything. I know they got a couple of good youngsters coming up in the half.
Yeah, I saw there was a lot of discussion from Brisbane people, or Brisbane fans online about maybe a player swap because of this, but nothing really has eventuated from that, so we have to wait and see. But I mean, the Eels are not opposed to being aggressive on those sort of things. We have to see how that plays out. I did have to acknowledge the tribal chief, supreme leader. They want to get sued by New Zealand Rugby Union, but Ron's in chat and he wanted the shout out. I want to point this out, guys. He wanted the shout out, so embarrass him, please. But Ron bringing the good oil, he does confirm that Jonah Pezet is set for a December joining to the Parramatta Eels. So thanks for that, mate. Good to have some clarity on that. Check the bell on, technically a rep forward, guys, correct. And also not going to be available to join the Eels for a while because he has wrapped up his duties for PNG, but that would mean that he's back after Christmas. So he might have an unofficial report and get orientated with the club, but he is not due for the preseason until the other side of December. Yeah, you got cooked, mate. You got cooked, Ron. Yeah, I guess I just got a message. Oh, I wish I could share it with you, chat. Ron's an awesome bloke, by the way, so show him some love. He does a lot of great work in terms of collating media and connecting Parra fans to some good news. So very much a favourite of mine. Awesome bloke. We do have more Parramatta news on the back of that, and we mentioned that battle in the forward pack, Luca. But part of that battle is Matt Doorey. And there was rumours swirling that he was set to reject an extension offer from the Parramatta Eels just a couple of weeks ago and maybe explore options elsewhere. But that quickly spun into an extension announcement. He was contracted for 2026, is now contracted to the end of 2027 as he extends his stay at the Blue and Gold. A lot of people in the wider NRL remember Doorey as a Bulldog and sort of have ties or time to that club there, but he's a Parramatta junior. Came through the Harold Matthews. I was telling you the other day, I was actually there at his very first rep trial with the Parramatta Eels. And how impressive he was even back then. And the only thing that's really stopped him ever since has been the injuries. And he had his most available season last year, or last season this year. This is that weird witching hour of the NRL between years and seasons. But it was his most productive and available season thus far, and he was very good for the Eels off the interchange, and now a part of the plan beyond just 2026.
Yeah, and I thought he had a really good year last year. I thought he really found his niche as that impact player off the bench. I think he's throughout his career in the last couple of years when he's been in Parra, he's kind of been that limbo player, that kind of edge, back rower, centre, middle forward at times. But
he's worn a few hats for the Eels. I think he's even moonlit at centre during a in-game positional crisis. So he's shown some pretty good versatility for the Eels. I think he's more, especially in that role as a bench forward, he probably trends more to a middle these days, where he brings that tremendous leg speed and the ability.
And I think that's got to do with the game speed.
Yes, 100%. That's a big part of the shift in the meta game in the NRL. But he brings tremendous leg speed in the ruck, throws his body in at 110% everywhere. So the sort of player you love to have in and about your top 17, like the sort of guy.
And
that
and I was going to say, like in previous years, I think that's when we had like junior and RCG, that middle rotation was something we really struggled with, having those like 20, 30 minutes with them off, and he's really added a way of impact and actually extra oomph to our pack when those guys do come off, and we're not so much dropping away for that 20, 30 minutes.
Yep, exactly. He fits a great niche for the Eels in that sort of mid-rotational minutes there. I do see some talk about Katoa. Yeah, we're going to talk about him on the other side of the podcast, guys. Diabolical situation. I've got some colourful words for all the people involved there. An absolute embarrassment for the NRL and the International Rugby League. But yeah, great news on Matt Doorey in the 2027 and signing a similar extension on the NRLW side of things. Contractor for next year, but then extending by another season. Elsie, who has been a talismanic front row for the Parramatta Eels in the NRLW, she extends her stay by another year. Luca, NRLW, probably their most consistent forward, honestly. Kendi Cherrington, obviously a phenomenal player too, but has been banged up for the Eels in recent seasons. Elsie has been a real pillar in the front row for the Eels and a huge re-signing to help them form a formidable triumvirate for the middle alongside Kennedy and also Keely Davis, who they announced just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, she's certainly been doing it for a long time as well, Elsie Albert. I think she's been probably one of the best forwards since the NRLW.
Real warhorse in the NRLW for sure.
Yeah, I think shame's when she's not on the field with injuries and but I think it's the kind of sign you want to keep around. Obviously, been around Parramatta for a few years now and does her job.
Yeah, exactly. Just powers through the middle. And we talked about the change in the meta game for the men. Elsie's a real throwback power forward in the front row for the NRLW. And the skill set in the NRLW is awesome, and they certainly show speed and ability to attack the ruck. But it's great for the game, in their part of the game, at least in their development cycle, that you can have the real throwback power forwards, I think. I mean, it's important for them foundationally to have some, like they don't just speed run catching up to the NRL in terms of how you play the game. And I think Albert's really, a figure in that and how dominant she is through the middle, playing that old school, tough nose, smash mouth prop forward.
And personally, it's something I really enjoy. Like as much as I like the NRL as a product now, I do love all the big boys getting involved.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
The old classic meter eaters.
Yes, you don't want to see them go the way of the dinosaur, and at least in the NRLW, there's plenty of time for them still. And look, if you're good enough in the NRL, you can still get away being that old school prop, but geez, it's demanding on them now. They've got a lot in their plate.
It feels like every guy's slimming down these days, though, and trying to add an extra few yards of pace and, being able to play that extra 10 minutes of football.
Yes, indeed.
Just the way it's going.
Now, John Rich in chat sort of preempted my next segment because he was asking how long do we have Abbi Church wrapped up? It's not long enough, whatever it is. And I understand why he's saying that, because Abbi Church is coming off her NRLW Jillaroos debut for Australia, where she was player of the match against the Kiwis in a real tough battle there. I think it was 10-6 was the end result there, 10-4. And Abbi set up the first try and scored the second en route to a 56-minute performance before cramps took her out of the game. Despite not playing the whole game, she went for nearly 200 metres off 17 carries, was popping up everywhere on the park, and has been a player that, not just for the Parramatta Eels, but for the New South Wales Blues and now the Jillaroos, has found a new level every time she's been brought up to another tier of football. And she's been a real emergent star in the NRLW. I'm just trying to find Just trying to check because the NRL signings portals are so spotty these days because they don't include options. Abbi Church is signed up to the end of 2028. So, John, you don't need to worry too much about losing Abbi anytime soon. The club have moved to lock her up long term alongside Cassie Toihiku, the 2 Eels, and Fontaine Tafua, the 3 Eels, signed to the end of 28. So it's a great trio of Parramatta Eels there. But yeah, Abby's been a real star for the Parramatta Eels. And you look at the girls in the NRLW and they have to work essentially double time because they still juggle full-time jobs of being nearly full-time footballers. Not quite, but they're getting pretty close to full-time footballers. Abby's a frontline responder. She's a paramedic. She's an absolute animal. And what she does on the field is genuinely inspirational. I think she's just an awesome player.
I think I said it to you during the game, though. She reminds me of Dylan Edwards in a lot of way, where she's
Guffo and Edwards are really the two
everything
comparisons.
Well, no nonsense, good effort, like all levels of the game. You know you're going to get 8 out of 10 no matter what, basically.
Yep. Yeah, and when you've got such a floor raiser, it is so good for a team. Someone that's always going to be a 7 or 8 out of 10, and they can obviously go above that too and have genuine star games as well. Having someone that raises the floor makes you so competitive on a weekly basis. And Chris Hill says, future captain, ? I believe she had co-captaincy honours at times this year. So, yeah, I think she's almost certainly a future captain for the Parramatta Eels. I'd be more stunned if she wasn't. What a great story for the Eels and for the NRLW. And her rise from being, seemingly diminutive winger to being a genuine representative star at fullback. So, and look, taking over from Tamika Upton in number 1 is crazy. Like the pressure, is there a more pressure-filled responsibility in the NRLW than taking over from Upton? Like, seriously.
Yeah, I don't think so. She had a standout year last year, right?
Yes.
Big reason.
En route to Dally M Fullback of the Year, and then I think runner-up in the Dally M overall. So huge season for Abby last year, backed it up this year with another great season where she got her representative flowers and has handled those responsibilities with aplomb. So just an awesome player and a great player to build around for the Parramatta Eels. That is nearly the end of the Parramatta news, mate. We do have a somber note to finish on, so we start and finish on, unfortunately, somber news. The club did put out a notification today in the afternoon saying Vale Peter Ryan. So Peter Ryan, age 91, passed on September the 21st. So the club obviously only found out recently because the passing was going back just a little bit. But Peter Ryan was Parramatta Eel 198, played for the Eels in the early 60s, had 14 first-grade caps, and sorry, I'm just trying to read through here. And played through Newtown and a few other clubs as well in the Country Carnival. So, unfortunately, a bit of somber news there. And, we send our best wishes to Peter's family. And it's been, unfortunately, a few Parramatta Eels this year that the club's had to put out that notification saying Vale. And it's always a really awful, piece of news to get on your RSS feed or on your announcement platform. And
definitely always tragic to hear.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as always, the best approach here is the celebration of their careers more than anything else, right? All the great things they did on the field. And certainly for Peter's family, getting to the Eels in the 60s were building. And I think that's, that 60s Eels did it tough into the 70s where the success started to come, and obviously in the 80s when the premierships really flowed. So one of those pioneers back in that time. So well done to Peter. John Rich did. Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't put that on the extension on the sheet. There was a blurb this week on the back of Josh Adokar's successful campaign in the Kangaroos, mentioning that the Eels are potentially close to a 2-year extension for the Fox, which would be good news. Obviously played some fantastic football for the Eels this season. When he's back from UK, Neil points out, probably will expedite any procedural work in terms of that contract, and I agree. So once that wraps up and he's probably reporting back to the preseason, I imagine the club might want to announce it before Christmas, if it gets to that point, obviously.
Yeah, especially in the light of what's happening with Lomax. I think it's sending
the Willie Woney decision. Yep, exactly. Just get Adokar on the lock and key, and obviously you do hope that Zach Lomax stays in the blue and gold fold. But who knows if R360? There's I believe Jai Gray has knocked back the rugby franchise and has set the re-sign to Rabbitohs. So it seems like some players have not bought in. We have to see what happens with Zach, and hopefully he can be a Parramatta Eel for the rest of his contract, because obviously he's a phenomenal player. No, I do have intermission music. I had intermission music playing, guys, but we'll skip it this week. I was explaining to my brother it's a bit of a bit between me and Craig, and I didn't want to subject him to my esoteric tastes. So we'll save it for when Craig is back, hopefully next episode or next news episode. So we'll jump straight into the NRL docket because there is a lot to talk about here. I've titled the podcast, obviously, preseason. Where did it go here? The preseason kicks off, NRL pops off, and the popping off part is no joke. We've got a lot to get through, and we'll try and power through it, mate. But we do start with the one that Chat was talking about earlier and the insanity that was the Eli Katoa situation for Tonga. I don't know if everyone in Chat is aware of what happened on the weekend, but Tonga played New Zealand on the Sunday game at roughly 4 o'clock. And both teams were vying for a place in the Pacific Championship final to take on Samoa. And the game was rocked ahead of kickoff by footage of Eli Katoa, who everyone knows as one of the preeminent back rowers in the game, I believe a reigning Dally M back rower. He got, by pure accident, popped in the middle of his face by Eli Katoa in just a warm-up drill. I think Katoa was trying to catch a high ball, and neither player was sort of aware of where each other was, and they drifted into each other's path, and Hopgood just put the shoulder right into the middle of Katoa's face. It was instant Cat 1. You saw the footage, mate. And I know you've got similar thoughts on it to me, but Katoa was clear. Maybe cleared the play is not the right word, because Tonga are trying to take plausible deniability here, saying they didn't know that he was concussed. But he was allowed to play, got into the game, had an early concussion HIA test again, cleared that HIA test, got back onto the field and had a tertiary HIA occur, where he then would fail the HIA and sit on the sideline. And there's footage out there of him mouthing, I believe there was some colourful language used, but essentially saying, "I don't feel so good, bro," to a trainer or to a player. And then he subsequently collapsed and was taken to the hospital on oxygen, was subject to surgery overnight to relieve pressure of a brain bleed and the subsequent pressure inside his skull. I think it's pretty fair to say it was a catastrophic failure of all the fail-safes we put in place for concussions.
Yeah, it's a bit of a baffling display of player welfare, which has definitely been a memo for the NRL and obviously greater rugby and sports in general of recently. So I'm not sure they got stuff lost in the confusion of international about independent doctors. I don't think maybe the independent doctor has any powers.
Yeah, they have scope for the pre-game. Exactly, that's got to be a point of investigation. Is we know the independent doctor operates between the whistles, but are they subject to being able to review any pre-game incidents? And if not, they should be.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, obviously this is a serious thing, and they're taking player welfare seriously. It's definitely something they look into, because something slipping through like this is really not on.
Yeah,
that was a serious thing. Obviously, what was it? Was there actually a concussion test prior to the game?
What I believe has been argued is that there was not a concussion check performed because Tonga were not aware. He was tended to by a trainer. I think there's footage of that, but I think Tonga is saying that they were not aware that he was potentially concussed, that there was a concussion incident that occurred. And
this is where I like to see clubs and teams be taking a bit more responsibility than just their
no
doctors.
doubt.
I know there's a need, and a lot of the players are going to say they're all right. And that's an you obviously you want that out of your players, kind of give it their all for the team. But at some point, you got to step in and look.
Yeah, and I think there was actually a part of the articles that come out in the wake of all this. I think there was a little snippet from our own Junior Barlow, who obviously one of the leaders of Samoa and a player that would know all about the impact of concussion, both for himself and from the players he's been around. He the sort of, to paraphrase what he was saying, was that there is almost an obligation to protect players from themselves, because players invariably are going to try and do everything they can to represent their country because of the pride for the jersey, and that the teams and staff need to be able to step in and protect the players from their own, or not maliciousness or anything like that, but just being their own worst enemies. And this was clearly a case where Tonga needed to step in and just say to Ellie, "Mate, I'm sorry, but you got to sit this one out. We're going to call in the 18th man. You are not good." And everything that happened here should be subject to a wide and deep probe, because I know that they're arguing that they weren't aware of it. That doesn't hold up to me. That doesn't pass the pub test.
Ignorance isn't.
Exactly. Ignorance is no excuse for these sort of things. You cannot hold that up in obviously a criminal court, but in the subject of this court, the NRL court, just ridiculous. And subject to what they find, I really think that staff should be subject to penalties and losing jobs in the rep scene, because he wouldn't have been that far from dying. Like a brain bleed, man. And yeah, Paul's saying he could sue the NRL. That could be a viable outcome of all this. And this is the sort of thing that the NRL has been deliberately positioning themselves to get away from with all their policies and protocols with concussions. And they've actually been one of the better professional codes in regards to concussion protocols. But when
I would agree with that. Yeah, like the NRL stepping in, like actually taking care of head. Like I say, just some positive coming out of this is actually
exactly. For all the fury and rage and justified anger, the biggest thing out of this, A, is that Katoa ends up okay long term, and that B, like you said, John Looker, that there is long term like progress made procedurally from what we saw, and the fact that there should never be another Katoa incident again.
Yeah, and I think coming in from what's his name from Newcastle, who
Callum Parra?
No, McKinnon.
Oh, Alex McKinnon, yeah.
Alex McKinnon, like they obviously terrible thing that happened with Alex, but obviously reprimands and
the approach to dangerous throws is, look, I'm not going to say it will never happen again, but the way players go about putting their hands between the legs and tackles and trying to drive has certainly de-escalated significantly ever since the McKinnon incident. Absolutely.
And the same thing I love to see from this situation, which is like you said, it's terrible.
Yeah,
what happened.
I don't know if that's towards us, Josh, or to something in chat. We're not trying to imply the NRL's at fault, but more that the NRL takes a step forwards because of this. They aren't in charge of internationals, but they do have a lot of sway over it. So I think they would work alongside the IRL to try and facilitate a much cleaner pre-game process that is all-encompassing of that independent doctor. It's just a really bad situation for Katoa. And people pointing out that Melbourne are going to be very upset about this naturally. They're a team that has incredibly high standards for everything, and player welfare will be right up there. I do note that Stefano Utoikamanu, who had that concussion 2 weeks ago, is still absent from the Pacific Championships final. So I think Melbourne may be taking a bit of a hardline stance on their players after what happened to Katoa there. They might not have told him to not play, but maybe they're just taking extra precautions now. I think
what would help as well is the success of the Pacific Nations is going to get more money driven into it, and as a consequence as well, is going to get better production, better staffing, better.
And that's exactly. It's going to be the IRL and NRL's mandate is to make sure that the necessary funds and professional sort of rollout of all those roles is there for all those teams. So definitely it's a fluid situation too. We haven't heard Melbourne. Melbourne did issue a statement that saying that Katoa was stable, and that's pretty much all their comments. But not much else to report on that other than Eli is still seemingly okay post-op, and has posted on our socials since saying that he's doing all right. I guess the question for him now is how long is he out for, Luca? Because Tamari Martin had a brain bleed and he was out of the game for nearly 3 years. For Katoa, what's considered a safe recovery window now?
I think with Tamari, though, that was more of an underlying condition than doing that. But it's an interesting because with brains and stuff like that, there's a lot of unknown when you compare damage.
That's a huge part of the CTA discussion is what we don't know, essentially.
So I dare say, the good thing is it's off season, so he's getting a good amount. I think they'll ease him into the off season. I wouldn't be surprised he was there to start the season with anything like that. But with concussion, I dare say they're going to get experts to look at it. They'll probably get multiple outlooks from doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there was ramifications into next season as well. So, it's definitely an interesting situation, and it might be a precedent setter for future things, especially, I get concerned when you see people like Luke Keary as well, like that.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about those concussion-prone guys. Luke Keary's right up there. Kalen Pong has had a really bad run of concussions. There are more than a few players that are pretty deep into the concussion symptoms that this is all going to be pertinent to. So
and it's just they've been lucky they haven't seen anything serious like Ellie, but we know this is a possible result now. I think we always have, but seeing it in first hand is a different story. That I think it might give you more clarification. Like you've seen in the NFL per se now that when they have the concussion, you're seeing guys sit out for 4 to 6 weeks, getting placed on injury reserve, and I think you might seeing stuff. I know that from what I've read, that after the first concussion, you really shouldn't be playing for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yes, yeah, that is fairly consistent across contact sports or sports that have the potential to cause concussions at the very least. And that's something we've spoken about. And look, Luke is not a neurologist or anything like that, but he does have a bit of a background in health in general. So he does read some of these pertinent articles. So when he says something like that, he's not just spewing it out of his backside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do believe, at least the royal we with sports and mental health, is that concussions do have a compounding effect, which is why you talk about that 4 to 6 window of recovery. Because if you get a secondary or tertiary concussion before you've recovered, it really cascades and escalates. Yeah,
and this is like, obviously a lot of this has just only been recently researched now, but it does seem like that it's exponential. The first concussion, if you have a second concussion within that time, it's much more severe if you don't let the adequate time for it to heal.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And chat's offered a few more concussion sort of prone candidates. Victor Radley, of course, Parramatta's own Ryan Madison. He's definitely had a bad run of concussions. And I mean, you do wonder if Katoa is out for the long term, if they really want to be safe with his recovery.
Will Warbrick was another one.
Yeah, Will Warbrick was out for most of the season, correct? He had
the season.
He had the stress headaches, like the pain headaches.
And he was perpetually coming back week to week, and they just couldn't do it. And that was, I don't know if that was only one concussion, one really bad one, or if he had a couple in 2 weeks. But I know that in recent seasons, the Parramatta Eels have certainly lost some young players too that have had concussion symptoms that have chosen to step away from the game for the sake of their better health, which I respect immensely, mate. Like, making that call is not easy, giving up your passion and something that you want to turn into a livelihood, but for your long-term viability, it's not an easy call, but it's the right call. So, but yeah, with Ryan Madison, I do wonder if Katoa's out for an extended period, could Melbourne be a potential landing spot? Because it's been pretty clear in recent weeks that the Eels would like to separate or move on from Ryan Madison. He could be potentially a viable replacement for Katoa in the Melbourne system. We have to wait and see. Yeah, Keegan Hipgrave, great call, John Rich. He retired in the end of the first year at the Parramatta Eels on a 2-year contract, where he'd been really impressive off the interchange for the Eels, and chose to step away from the game. And I believe he's taken up cooking, like social media and cooking, and done really, really good in that regard. And there's increasingly players that will do that. Yeah, Boyd Cordner. Yeah, chat's all over this. Boyd Cordner had some really bad concussions. And certainly if you go back, back to the old days, like 90s and pre-90s, the amount of players that would have been playing through concussions would have been ridiculous. So we're becoming better at it, but as made evident on the weekend, we're still not good enough, mate. The protocols are not there yet, and people continue to prioritise on-field success over player well-being, which is why, as Junior said, players need to be protected from themselves sometimes, and this is very much the case here. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And, you and me both having played sport, you never want to get off the field, but
yep.
Yeah,
you don't want
I
the team
think
down.
It's a common problem.
And yeah, exactly. That the brotherhood can be a real detriment in that regard. And like you said, you don't want to let your brothers down, but you don't want your brain to turn to mush. Alrighty. So Hipgrave was on the Bloke podcast released today. Okay, that'll be a good listen to. Thanks, Neil. I had plenty of time for Hipgrave in the year that we had him. It was really unfortunate that he had to retire, but again, I will never knock a player for choosing to prioritise their long-term mental well-being, given what we do and don't know about concussions. Yeah, Andrew Davey had a really bad concussion at one point for the Eels, and that was what kept him out of the game for a long time. We do move on, though. Staying with the Melbourne Storm, though, Eli Katoa with the concussion, but Ryan Pappenhausen with the release. We'd sort of speculated that Ryan Pappenhausen was going to be moved on from the Storm at the end of his current contract, Luca. But this one came as a bolt from the blue. The Storm just said, "No, mate, you can go. You're free. We'll let you pack your bags and get out of here." And the only real inclination we had that something was coming was a bit of the philosophical posting that you see from players the day before when big news ends up breaking. I think that Ryan Pappenhausen sort of had that classic philosophical, what does the future hold for me sort of post on social at one point. But he's now a free agent, not being linked to any clubs just yet. Obviously, R360 was in the periphery for him. He was one of their primary targets going back to day one of all that talk. But R360 seems to have stalled out, at least in the media. We haven't heard much more about it. Where does he end up? Is he going to do a Jonah Pezet, take the Pezet deal, or 1 year transitional deal en route to the Perth Bears? Does he go to international rugby, Japan or Europe or something like that? Or is R360 real and he's going to be their pin-up boy?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting situation. Not really sure what to make of it because after their big ultimatum from the NRL.
Yeah, the potential 10-year bans. Yep.
And not just the players, and the managers as well, because as I believe, his manager's representing a lot of the.
I believe it's Quentin Javosky who's linked directly to most of the R360 candidates. So,
yeah.
But yes, that has certainly called off ever since Volandis put out the mandate that if you even have a chat with him, we're going to ban you for 10 years. But yeah, Pappenhausen, free agent. I don't know. This is I see in chat Paul's having a bit of a cheeky cough about the Dogs. Look, the Dogs are certainly a team that will manipulate, be very reckless with the cap and sort of move players on and to clear space for a Pappenhausen. I think fullback's probably their. I was going to say it's their weakest.
I think it helps the Dogs with their very conundrum in the halves and shifting around burden, and
that would be the key, isn't it? Because you've got Mitch Woods. I think it's Mitchell Woods coming up as a junior in the halves, and they obviously signed Lachlan Galvin. They've got too many backs in the back line. If you've got Burton bumped out of the halves, he goes into the centres, I presume. And then you've got...
does he go to fullback and stays in the centres? Or
Chat does think that Pappenhausen could end up the Dogs. But, yeah, you've got Crichton, you've got Sherry, you've got on the wing, what's his name? Young Rinakama is one of them. But the big offloader. Oh God. Kiraz. Yeah, I was like, it's K. It's Kiraz. Like they've got a lot of their backline spots filled. So I don't know if they go out and sign Pappenhausen, and let's put aside any issues about the cap. Let's just make that superfluous to any discussion. They would have to be moving on at least one star player just from a positional basis, not from a cap basis. Like moving to create space to create the opportunity to play in the backline. So, be interesting.
I'm sure everyone's talked to the deaf about the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's been a constant point of discussion in their, like I said, their reckless approach to the cap.
I think for a good reason, right? Because who knows what they're going to do.
Peter's saying that Pappenhausen's lost his main strength and his pace, and I don't disagree. I think you saw in that final where he had that scrum play down the right edge, broke through, and I know that Reece Walsh is lightning quick. Like, Reece Lightning is literally the nickname, but Pappenhausen just could not take a yard. Like, he had the yard on him and he could not take it to the goal line, and I was really surprised then. And I think that that's probably true, that he's not back to his full pace, and maybe he never will be again. And that might be. And
just going off that, I think I agree with you what you're saying is lost yard of pace, but I think people also forgetting that Ryan Pappenhausen is not that young anymore. He's missed so much of his kind of
prime
top end years, prime years. That he's 28, 29, and
turning 28 in June next year. So he's obviously not he's not like a dinosaur, but
not a dinosaur, no. But for a guy that's reliant on his speed, like he's not the biggest guy. He's not small, but he's not the biggest guy. He's not going to be doing 200 meters for you out of the back.
Yeah,
charging off hit up after hit up, and missing that much time a game would be tough anyway for anybody coming back from. But I think he's just he's kind of missing that extra oomph, which is what was his real separating factor to kind of make him one of the top fullbacks, was that pace and burst.
Exactly. That electric speed was really what separated him. And that's what had him on the cusp of playing State of Origin until those repeat injuries at the wrong time of the year for 2 or 3 years in a row, preventing him from making a inroad and sort of open the way for Dylan Edwards to cement his spot at the fullback role for the Blues. Now, we don't know where he's going to end up. And we've mentioned, the Perth Bears, Canterbury, international rugby in some capacity, R360. But for Melbourne, what exactly does it mean? Because obviously in terms of the direct replacements, Saul Farlongo is the next guy up. And he's certainly been playing fullback while Pappenhausen's been out in various capacities in the last 18 months. But the other thing too is that it's not just who plays fullback, it's what do they do at the cap space, because Ryan Pappenhausen would have been on a pretty coin. And we know that Melbourne they're kind of in a bit of a roster transition. They come from a grand final right now, and they want to be still competing for grand finals. And the player that's been quietly linked to them in the media is big Tino Fa'asuamaleaui in a reunion down there in Melbourne. Is that the right direction for them? I don't even know if they've got the cap space, given that the Perth Bears are rumored to be throwing nearly $2 million at Tino, and there's certainly going to be other clubs. But for Melbourne, Fa'alogo is the obvious candidate fullback. But what do they do with the rest of that cap space in your best opinion?
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the Tino signing. He's obviously an excellent player. The contract talks are getting a bit ridiculous for the price, though. Like, at what point it's just too much?
Yeah, we know cap
player.
expansion is coming with the new TV deal at some point. But oh my goodness, it's a lot. It's a lot of money for a player, and especially for a non-half.
Yeah, exactly. Like the non-half part's key for me. I know he's an important part, and he's got that leadership value as well that he brings. So I'm not doubting he's obviously deserving of a big contract, Tino.
But yeah, they have cleared a surface element off the books too. That's the other important aspect of it too. So I don't know how much Melbourne have already assigned to spend expenditure internally, because they signed Stefano. They've obviously re-signed Jerome Hughes. Cameron Munster's got a pretty big deal for him as well. But they probably do have the sort of capacity to make something happen for a player like Tino, which is kind of crazy.
And unfortunately, as we've seen in the past, Melbourne have a good history of like signing up guys with big contracts and then fighting guys around them to do a job.
Exactly. Craig Bellamy and Frank Panese certainly have the chops to make a big albatross of a contract like that work by finding the necessary value in other positions.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense for them. You know, I think everybody's going to be in the market, so I don't know if there's any certainty that the Perth offers rumored to be true $2 million.
Tino's already got a ring with Melbourne from back in the day, so he doesn't need to go ring chasing. He could just like pad that bank account and be a pioneer for Perth. So be very interesting to see what Tino does.
The big reason he went to the Titans was to be the guy, right? To be the
it was, yes, 100% was to be the guy. Except they got their timelines all wrong and sort of bungled building around him, and he gave him 4 or 5 years to do that, and now he's opted to test the market. He might still stick at the Titans, but I think signs are pointing to probably Melbourne or Perth. We've got Peter McGeer in chat. He's going to be bullish about Keon Kalamatangi coming. We'll talk about Keon shortly, because his player agent has spoken via the media about what sort of market to expect for the big man. But we do move. We're doing a good job linking this stuff. I didn't even mean to, but we were talking about the Titans and Tino sticking there. Speaking of the Gold Coast Titans, Luca, and we do love a bit of a dubious mutual, conflicts of interest here in the NRL. But Matty Johns and Gordon Tallis are believed to be minority investors in the Gold Coast Titans. Matty Johns was linked in one article late last week, I want to say, and then it came out that Gordon Tallis was also looking at investing in the Gold Coast franchise too. And Tallis is not a surprise, because he's been a big part of the Titans in recent years as an ambassador and repping them in the media. Matty Johns is a bit of a left field choice. Nova Cashew, a Newcastle boy that's probably got better ties to the Shire, if you're talking about not Newcastle, given the time he's played there, and I think where he's spent time living as well. But Matty Johns investing or potentially investing in the Titans. A, what do you think about investing in the Titans in general, which could be a funny opinion? And B, look, they're not the only ones there, because Phil Gould and Brayford Astor, both of whom we've spoken about on this podcast in the past about their respective conflict of interests. Like, how do you juggle that, given that you would have access to, you'd be privy to like other club information as a broadcaster that you could then weaponize, I guess, as a investor in the Gold Coast Titans?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this stake as well. Fan favorites like Brave on NRL 360. It's certainly a thing. Like, obviously, it's not outright a conflict of interest. There are different companies they're working for in ways, even though News Corp is behind the NRL. But it's a weird situation, right? Again, like, Gordon Tallis is not a surprise.
Yeah, because he's been on board as an ambassador for the longest time for the Titans.
I don't think he really tries to hide his bias towards the Titans when they've conflicts.
No, he certainly wears his heart in his sleeve in that regard, and he's been very pro-Titans over Brisbane in recent seasons for sure.
And that's one thing I don't mind in the media. Which I'm still not a big fan of the conflict of interest, but if you're going to have a conflict of interest, be clear about it. Be clear you work there. Gordon is very, transparent that he is an advocate, and he's been like an ambassador for the Titans. So there's no clear thing like that. Why I think some other people try to kind of conceal their involvement. Like, I wouldn't know Matty Johns was ever linked to the Titans if it wasn't for this article
Yeah.
and it had an investment there. Though I do think Matty Johns, the guy, does a pretty good job of staying impartial in terms of.
I agree, and yeah, I think that he probably will be largely impartial. I do think that there is enough happening now in the NRL between the player managers who are media personalities and potential minority owners that we might be approaching some sort of, again, I'd use the word mandate, but sort of a line in the sand for the NRL that will clarify the rules around conflict of interests.
Well, it's interesting that comes up because like it came up in the NFL recently.
Tom Brady,
Tom Brady, and like him seeing the coach's box for the Las Vegas Raiders, where technically under his contract he's not had any direct coaching involvement as a broadcaster, and their broadcasters are completely independent of the NFL as well. So, yeah, looking at bigger sporting codes as a metric, as a comparison that we can go to, they've done it there and they've determined that it is in fact a conflict of interest, and you really should have very limited roles as a media person if you're invested in a company.
Yes, and that's sort of the point that we're both sort of circling towards, is that at some point the NRL might just have to ratify what can and can't be done as a media personality and a player manager or a minority owner. So Paul says, and I don't disagree, mate. Paul says he does not see, sorry, but I don't see the Titans being a force anytime soon. I think that if anything, they've got a history of failure. I think that is the legacy of the Gold Coast in various iterations between the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast and the NRL. And I know that they're not the same area, but they've sort of been the same team in terms of DNA. They've done nothing but be failures. And I don't know what it is about the glitter strip, but players clearly can't lock in and they don't get the right people in the right positions. You talk about winning starting in the front office, and the Titans have not done that, and their predecessors have not done that. So I agree that they're obviously trying to get these big personalities and NRL minds on board to try and kickstart success. And maybe that will be what is the catalyst for the Titans being great. But I agree with Paul too that based on what we know and based on exposed form and that old adage, you are what your record says, the Titans are they're the Titans.
And to give some credit to the Titans, one thing I do like the recent signing of Josh Hannay. Look, whether he works out or not, I think it's a bit more of a proactive signing rather than signing another
agreed.
coach.
Not doing a retread, and that's all the Titans have done in recent years. Des Hasler, Neil Henry, all those sort of coaches. Obviously they've had their success, but at the time that reflect the time of their career, they weren't the right guys in the NRL metagame. And Hannay was the other finalist for the Eels, opposite of Jason Ryles. Yeah. And I would have been perfectly happy with Josh Hannay. And I think, reflecting back on what I was saying on the podcast, Hannay might have been my preferred candidate at the time. So I'm really keen to see. I
remember us talking about this, and it came down to Ryles and Hannay just because you didn't want a known quantity at the half where they've been around. I'm not going to say fail. A lot of these coaches have been successful in their time frames as well, but in the modern game, haven't kind of quite adapted to what's required. And you rather go for some young blood that potentially has a different outlook on the current modern game. And
agreed.
That can take you far.
And look at what Jason Ryles has done in the way the Eels approach their games now. It's not quite zigging where the rest of the teams are zagging, but they're definitely trying to do their own thing inside of the actual NRL metagame right now. And I think that Hannay will provide something similar to the Titans. And I think the question is, can they get the right guys around him? And that's a big thing that Jason Ryles did. And that's probably obviously among Eels fans and people that listen to this podcast, they would be very cognizant of the fact that we have spoken about the experience, the Sam Mowers, the Wise Mantles, the Nathan Browns, and all the experienced heads he's brought on. Jason Ryles has a great auxiliary coaching staff around him. Can Hannay replicate that at the Titans? And I suppose Matty Johns might be a bit of an inclination towards that. He's obviously going to be an investor and not a coach, but he'll be an NRL mind that will be at the beck and call of Hannay to probe and question and pick on. And maybe Johns can also help piece together a good coaching staff around Hannay.
If Bellamy doesn't retire next year.
Well, yeah, and Chat's having a bit of fun with that too. And Chris Hill pointing out the alternate reality will end up with Wayne Bennett. Yeah, and look, Wayne Bennett obviously still a good coach, but I think the Eels, by a bit of luck, almost wandered into the right guy with Jason Ryles, because they went all out for Bennett, got rejected, and then turned their efforts to the best of the rest, and that was Ryles and Hannay. And Jason Ryles, it is way too early to make the definitive call and he's going to be a great coach. But all the signs are glowingly positive right now.
Yeah, I've been pretty happy with
Just-
Ryles. His performance coach has been very proactive about getting the youngsters up, giving the guys a shot, moving away from guys that are not part of his vision, regardless of the kind of quality of play you want people
It's been a breath of fresh air. And you know that I was a massive Brad Arthur advocate. And, there was obviously some things outside of Arthur's control that maybe hindered his ability to fully unleash his vision. But Ryles has come in and not just made all the right sounds, but pressed the right buttons. And it's been so fun. Like last year, we lost a lot of games. Last season, oh my God, sorry guys, I hate this crossover period in the year. Last season, we lost a lot of games, and obviously at the end, we won quite a few. But the entire time we were losing, I was like, this is fine. Like, this is great. Well, not great. That's a terrible way to put it. This is fine. I can see the vision. I can see the plan. I can see Ryles, putting the young guys in the right positions to be a part of the picture moving forwards. And for the Titans, that's what they're going to hope that Hannay can also do, because they've got some okay players up there, but they've got some big holes in their roster.
Yeah, and potentially some bigger ones to come.
Yes, and potentially some big ones to come. They've done a big clean out, and they've got a bit of cap space, but how are they going to use it? And speaking of investments, Nick Politis, Uncle Nick, he's I didn't actually realise this. He's not a New South Welshman. He hails from that way up north of the border, and he's buying out the old Caxton Hotel, $50 million for the piece of rugby league. I suppose you can argue it's paraphernalia, but a publican on Caxton Street now.
Going to move it to his little treasure trove.
Get it into Allianz Stadium in the Roosters alcove there with all the history. Yeah. But yeah, there's not too much commentary on this one in terms of you can make jokes about dodgy deals and whatnot, but interesting bit of sort of NRL adjacent news there. If Politis buying out such an important historical location that isn't directly rugby league but is quintessentially rugby league.
Especially Magic. I've been up there a couple of times myself in recent
Magic
years.
Round. Yep.
It does have a good vibe at the Caxton during the weekends, but it is on brand of Nick Politis to rack up his rugby league memorabilia. Whether it is
I know some Parra fans with incredible rugby Parramatta away rugby league collections, but I don't think anyone's going to have Uncle Nick's catalogue of rugby league stuff.
And to be fair to him, it's not just Roosters.
He's got
all
just
times and ages.
Yep. Yeah, anyone that's seen that little Allianz museum they've got there at the stadium, he's just genuinely a passionate fan of the game and collects slices of history there. So, big get for Nick. It's certainly a good pub does all right as an investment, and the Caxton I think is probably the best pub you can get.
Yeah. I don't think it's not going to return its value.
No.
And to be honest, if I had Nick's wealth, I wouldn't be too shy about buying stuff like that.
No, sir. And we move on to the Western Australian franchise now, the Bears. Not much of an update, but they have ratified their home field sites. The Western Australian Cricket Ground, the Waka, and the Waterbank site will be where they perform their operations or where they operate out of. So they continue to find all their important logistical pieces ahead of their inception into the game. And while we still await their first recruits, we know they'll be working... will be playing underneath Mal Meninga, as questionable appointment as that is, but they'll be playing at the Wacker. So the Lily Marsh stand is set for an upgrade to bring it up to NRL standard, and then that'll be ready for 2027 is the hopeful timeline, while there are upgrades going to the Waterbank to go through to 2030 to help them with both team and community infrastructure. So good developments there for the Bears, mate. I mean, it's not the sexiest piece of news, but it is an important piece of the puzzle for the expansion franchise.
Yeah. There's not much news going on with the Bears, so it's exciting to hear something coming out of them.
Yeah, like I said, they've been linked to a lot of players. You've heard Cameron Munster and Ryan Pappenhausen and Tino Fasul, Mala Awi. I've seen a fair few media pundits put together really shitty potential team lists and sort of shopping lists for the Bears, and it's not pretty. I think they do.
To be fair, a lot of teams have wrapped up a lot of the key signings.
Yeah.
I think they're.
Yep,
After
they
the Dolphins,
definitely have.
I think recently people have been a bit more on the nose about not getting any of their valuable signings snapped up.
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why you see them saw Dylan Brown
Yep.
get
Get such a long-term deal. Yeah.
They knew that if it came across, there'd be other people competing.
John Rich asked about the Wacker and Optus, and I think they're just being realistic with their outlook on the crowd right now, John. I think long-term they'd like to take big games to Optus, but
is Optus around stadium or?
It's around stadium, yeah. So
I think the WAC is a bit smaller as well, so it might be a bit
slightly better to watch for league. And obviously, long term they want to just get a rectangular stadium done, but we have to wait and see how that plays out. Because is that what Waterbank's going to be part of? I'm not sure, but yeah, ideally long term they get a proper football stadium, and certainly I think the way governments love to spend money, they could probably justify it. But yeah, the Bears do need to get a few signings to start the ball rolling for them. And a lot of conjecture and a lot of theoretical player lists, but nothing to speak of right now. And given that they're going to come in 2027 and they're free to negotiate with players for the November 1 deadline's been opened up, they're going to need to get cracking. And yeah, we talked about players being signed up long term. The NRL doesn't give expansion teams, like you see in a lot of American sports, when there's expansion, teams can protect, 5 players on their roster, but then every other player will be subject to being renegotiated with the expansion franchise. The NRL doesn't allow that, so you've got to be really aggressive and find the value, and the Perth Bears need to get on top of it.
Yeah, and I thought it would have had a few signings now.
Chris Bettiol saying they'll be playing at HBF Park, which is where the Perth Glory plays, so there you go. So is the Wacker going to be training for them? How much is
their operating facilities?
Yeah. So, yeah, that would make sense then. So, thanks for that one, Chris. So, they'll play out of the A-League stadium there, which will make way more sense, and then they'll train out of the Wacker because the Wacker kind of just exists now, doesn't it? Does it even play Shield cricket? I don't know if there's any cricket fans in chat or...
I think it does do Shield cricket. Still.
Probably, because like Optus is just too much of a premium venue to use.
Yeah.
But, yeah. That's the latest on the Bears, and... we can move on to, a more spicy bit of news. There's reports that New Zealand Rugby League is exploring legal options to contest the registration of the Papua New Guinea Chiefs on the basis of the Waikato Chiefs having the copyright claim on that logo. And when Craig and I were talking about this, Luca, I mentioned that I thought that there'll be enough of a differentiation between the code, the colours, and the symbol, the logo itself, that this wouldn't be a real issue. But clearly, New Zealand Rugby Union want to stir up the nest a little bit. But given how many, and look, I know that league and union can argue there's an overlap there, and certainly there'll be times when the PNG Chiefs will go to New Zealand to play the Warriors, and times when the Waikato Chiefs come to Sydney or Melbourne to play Australian franchises, or Brisbane too, to play the Eastern Coast Australian Super Rugby franchises. But is there enough of a crossover to really give us precedent to take the court? Are they just being a bit petty? Given that there are so many various Chiefs, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs off the top of the head, but there'd be a ton of other professional level Chiefs teams in other codes. Is this just NZRU being petty, or is there a legitimate grievance here?
This is the classic just rugby union versus rugby league situation. Yeah, because the Chiefs is not really a traditional title associated with those cultures. Like obviously they have their chiefs and their
exactly.
It's a tribal ubiquitous word used right across the
a tribal chief
spectrum.
Is not special to any or endemic to any particular regional tribe. The chieftain is just a global figure, isn't it? So, and Chris is in chat giving the good oil again. He points out that if they're going to do that, the New South Wales Blues held that title before the Auckland Blues. So if New Zealand Rugby Union wants to get really petty, the NRL do have grounds to respond and get real nasty.
If they take up the cockroach mascot, then they can keep it.
Yes. So that's very much a wait and see. It might just be a bit of posturing from Rugby Union to rifle up the feathers of Peter V'landys, who certainly loves to have a bit of a handbags at 10 yards of other codes at times. But we do move on with an executive focus now. I don't know if you guys saw, but there's been a bit of a reshuffle out at the Seagulls. Paul Mestrov has suddenly announced his resignation from the CEO role for the Manly Warringah Seagulls. And the reports are now that Jason King, former front rower, former Manly star, is the favourite to replace him. Between Jason Ryles and Jason King, the front rowers are rising up, Luca.
Yeah, I think we'll make the joke before. It's the big men with the big brains are starting
Yes.
to get the roles.
Yeah, we've had enough of all the halves and the backs taking the glory. The front rows are rising up. Look, you got to imagine that Jason King, similar to someone like Mark O'Neill and even Jason Ryles, and I know it's not the same role, CEO versus a head of football versus a coach, but it would have done the requisite groundwork to be a good candidate for this position. I think Manly would just hire a former player and say, you know what, be CEO. But it'll be
I dare say done a bit of
yes,
extracurricular
exactly.
study.
Yeah, I can't really speak too much because I don't know Jason King's background, but right, we joked about nepotism on the show, bringing you on. Professional sports do love a nepo hire, don't they? They love a former player. They love a familial connection. And Jason Ryles obviously
Shane Waldron.
Shane Waldron in the NFL, yes. But this is very much, I suppose, loosely a nepo hire. It's a former player, but I'd be very interested to see how he does.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised they have done a change of leadership up there, considering the Daly Cherry Evans saga early in the year, and then late in the year, the Tom Trbojevic contract saga as well. There's definitely been a bit of friction between the front office and the players going on. So I think it might be the right moves, but maybe they need more than just that to help them out.
Yes, and look, you know my feelings about the Trbojevic situation and Manly wasting their resources. Wasting's not the right word, but investing in the Trbojevic boys when they could make a clean cut, a la what Ryles did with Quinton Gufferson and try and bring in a new era. This is probably Manly moving towards a new era off the field, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. That might actually spark some success for him. But look, if it goes wrong for Manly, you're not going to see any tears from me.
Nah, everyone loves Manly, right?
Yeah. And we actually have the extra layer of dislike for Manly because our mum was in her tenuous connection to the rugby league before we got involved, was a North Sydney fan. So she never forgave them for essentially killing the Bears. So we got that extra layer of grudge as well as being a Parra fan. We've got the North Sydney connection there. But moving on now, and another bit of news that was preempted in chat, Luca, and Peter making the bold statement that look for him to come to Parramatta. But Keon Kalamatangi is officially free to negotiate with rival clubs. November 1 is obviously passed as of a few days ago. And there was a little blurb in the media from one, I can't remember which journal it was. I'm not sure if it was Chamis or one of those ones. But essentially the blurb was that his manager has said that Kalamatangi believes that he's going to be like a prime factor in the front row, like be a middle forward. So confirming that move from edge to middle, and that his market is sort of around $900,000 a season. And
and I think we talked about this, right?
Yeah, we did have a chat, yeah.
And I guess $900,000, I do think that's on the steeper end, though I do like Keon Kalamatangi. I do think he's a very valuable forward to have. Obviously, Parramatta be interesting. When a guy like that caliber's on the market, you got to investigate it, right? And I do think, I wouldn't be surprised if Parramatta was showing some interest in his contracts.
He's almost like an ideal forward to inherit from Junior or take over from Junior, isn't he? Not as much a ball player as Big Junes, but has an equally big engine and the ability to be an impact through the middle. So I would certainly hope the Eels are in on Kalamatangi, and he might end up being the better. We talk about still being expensive, but I think he'll be the better value proposition over someone like Tino, who his market just seems to be exploding. So maybe not as quote unquote good a player as Tino, and certainly a bit older, but I think you can get plenty of value out of someone like Kalamatangi.
And a lot of his contracts are going to look interesting in the retrospective of how much does the cap go over the next 2 years. I think right now, looking at it, $900,000 contract looks a bit steep for Keon. That's just my personal opinion, not of so much of the value of Keon's play as the position. That if you're paying $900,000 for a prop forward, they've got to be the best of the best, right? And his last year he had some terrific games. I think I would argue that he was a bit hard done by not to get Origin selection. Especially around that period he's putting in those.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and obviously he's now submitted himself in the Australian team, but was probably a bit of an unlucky outsider at Origin level. So I would certainly hope the Eels do their due diligence. I think there's plenty of value to be had in Keon, even with the talk of $900,000 a season. And you sort of hope that maybe that can be the establishing point. You can talk down a little bit from there, depending on the duration of the contract.
Yeah, and that's a big part we talked about, right? Like a 2-year $900,000 contract is very different from a 4-year $900,000 contract. If you can go a bit longer for security and a bit cheaper contract,
Yep.
that's obviously nice. But yeah, I think it's certainly an interesting proposition. I think there's definitely space on our team for another. It's not quite an impact forward. He is a bit more of a workhorse these days, but there is space on our team for that kind of forward.
Now, question from chat from Chris saying, if we came to the comp at the same time as Manly, why are they celebrating 80 years and we are not? Fair question, Chris. Maybe the club is set to announce 80th anniversary stuff. I have to follow up on that, and obviously if Craig was here, he'd be a better point of contact for that, given his presence on the supporter group alliance. But that's something you have to sort of take on notice and get back to, because you're right. If Manly's celebrating 80 years, why aren't the Eels? And I couldn't tell you, because the club hasn't made any mention of the 80th anniversary, have they? Why are Manly celebrating 80 years in 2026 as a 47 club? Did they get like half incepted the year before? What? This is actually what? I don't know about that. Are they just jumping the gun? Well, Jamie, you're right. You're right. It does restart. They are a joint venture, and then they were a joint venture and they came back. We celebrated our 70th anniversary in 2017, I believe. I think I remember the blue, like the yellow and blue logo. So yeah, that the 2017 would make sense. 2027. So
maths is harder.
I am 99% sure we did the 70th anniversary in 2017. I'm just going to quickly Google this. Images. Yeah, it was. There's a logo, 70th anniversary logo. Yeah, that's right. It had the spearfisher on the back. Yeah, the indigenous tying back to the original Parramatta logo, the indigenous spearfisher. So I have that. Someone we'll talk about this when Craig is back. Why are Manly doing their 80th anniversary and what should be their 79th anniversary? They were incepted in 46 in the 4th of November. There you go. So they're barely, wow. They must have been officially included but didn't play in 46, right? Wow. So we would have been sister clubs in 47 as far as being incepted into the competition to play, but Manly were...
It's still a year earlier though, right? 46. It's 25.
What's going on here? Parramatta Eels. This is a great bit of a segue, Chris. Well done. Where are the Eels? What time? What's their official foundation date? No, it's the same date, 4th of November. So we choose to acknowledge the year that we started competing. Manly, to be different, are choosing to acknowledge the year that they were brought in 46, whereas we choose 47 as our actual inception year. Okay. There you go. That looks. I can't tell you if that's the exact reason, but I think that is the reason. So Manly choose the actual date of when they were formally included. We choose the date from when we were actually playing football. Yeah, we'll try and follow this up. This is actually a really interesting, like, sort of diversion between the Eels and the Seagulls. Alrighty, but back to the run sheet. We go back to the Gold Coast Luca. A player that has been, will he stay? Will he go? Are the Titans going to ship him? Jaden Campbell apparently is going to stay. Set to sign a 4-year extension worth roughly, I think $850 was what they were saying in the media. Always take that with a pinch of salt, given it's a media figure. But a pretty hefty extension for a player that is very talented, but hasn't really found his home in a singular position. I know that some people think he's a better fullback. Some people love him as a halfback. He's obviously a very talented player, but that's a lot of money for a dude that hasn't really locked down a position for the Titans.
Yeah, I definitely agree upon that opinion that he's a bit of a hybrid player, isn't he? He's not quite. He's been playing the 7 on his back this year, but I'd argue he's more of that 5/8 role with that classic run game. It's obviously very light on his feet, but I'm not sure. With the Titans, they got about 4 fullbacks in their roster, so
Keanu Kenny, AJ Brimson,
yeah.
and also
my
the
personal
Groot
opinion
as
is
well.
Brimson's the best out of those, but none of them can seem to stay fit either.
No,
So,
that's the other thing that's been killing him is, like you said, no singular player stays fit, let alone multiple of them. So
yeah, Keeney, Brimson, and this year he didn't have too many injuries, Campbell, but in previous years he's been in and out of the team through injury. So while I don't hate the re-signing, I don't think it's a ridiculously overpay either. I don't know what the long-term plan is with them. It seems to be a common theme with the Titans is what is their long-term outlook, and we were talking about this earlier. Like, what is their strategy? Hopefully, Josh Hannay can help sort that out. But I think 4 years is also a long time to commit to a guy that's had trouble staying on the field. But I guess that's the current half market, isn't it? You're seeing that if there's a guy that's decent in that position, you just got to lock him up because if you don't, someone else will.
Michael in chat was asking, wasn't he going to be our X Factor 1 year? And I believe that was the case, Michael. I think he was very close to joining the Eels in that sort of nebulous Brett Arthur X Factor era. And for whatever reason, it wouldn't be the first signing for Brett Arthur that unfortunately fell through beyond his control. But yeah, he was very close to joining. My understanding was, and I'm not Craig, he has better details, but he was very close to joining the Eels. Could have been. There's an alternate timeline where instead of being the imitation Parramatta Eel with the Gold Coast yellow and blue, he could have been in the proper blue and gold. And we've got where is it? Chris Hill saying that Hannay sees him as a 7. I think that's probably the best projection, like the most reasonable projection for him at the Gold Coast is they lock him in the 7 and try and go from there. And then John Rich saying he's always seen Campbell in the back line more than anything as a centre or winger. I don't think he can play halfback. He strikes me as one of those players that will have like these beautiful runs at halfback where everything falls into line. But as we've always seen, the best halfbacks are the ones that nail down the really ugly parts of the game, the sort of in between the flashy plays, they're really consistent. And that's why guys like Cronk and Cleary and Moses obviously tend to be hailed as premier 7s. We're going to talk about that, Phil. That is actually part of our quick fire stuff coming up because the Titans did make another signing in the halves. But before we get there, another quick hitter for you, Luca. James Graham on his Buy Round podcast. I believe it was the Buy Round podcast because he's on a few different podcasts, but I think it was the Buy Round. And given his connections to the Dogs, has teased that Josh Curran could be squeezed out of the Belmore outfit on the back of their roster issues. Curran, another former Eel. We do love a former Eel coming home, but plays are interchangeable between the edge and the middle. Pretty handy player. Does he... and I was going to ask you about roster construction for the Eels in the back of the Eels news. We can probably do it here. Is he a fit for Parramatta after the Jack DeBellin signing, given what we have or what we need in our roster? I know we probably need some backs, but do you look at Josh Curran or does he end up elsewhere?
Yeah, Curran's one that I'm very conflicted on because he's played pretty well at most clubs he's been around. He's been around the NRL now a lot. But he seems to always be moved on. So I've always wondered that there's something a bit more behind the scenes going on. Not so much of his on-field performances, but I'm not saying he's not a good guy.
Has just been like an awkward fit for the rosters.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to mesh with anything. No one's like, as much as they don't like, they like and playing, no one's really fighting to keep him either. He always seems to be the guy that gets squeezed out. So, yeah, I'm not sure. He's obviously a decent player, Curran. He's had good performances. In terms of our roster construction, yeah, look, I think he's a good player that can make the team, but I don't think he's an obvious addition that, clearly strengthens a weakness in our team. I think our forward rotation's a bit of an interesting one. Right now. You got a lot of
that's the thing, isn't it? There's going to be a
fighting.
surplus of good players in the forward pack playing reserve grade because you're trying to squeeze the two hookers and Dylan Walker into both the bench and the middle rotation there, which means you've only got at best.
And if Joash is going to get
Joash, another guy that's vying for a playing time as a utility or even more than a utility off the bench maybe. And you're talking about guys like
that's only space for two genuine forwards and on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. And you got young guys like Geimer, like that back row battle, Katonga, Tuolangi, Williams, Doorey. Tuavidi, Luca Moretti, yep. We haven't even mentioned him or podcast. Someone did joke. No, I'll lie. Chat did joke that I had Luca Moretti on at the start. But it's actually not that far.
I'm bigger.
Yeah, absolutely massive. G unit.
My ego, maybe.
But funnily enough, all good Italian boys, Luca and Luca. I wouldn't say you at some point you're kind of like a captive team to the market itself, aren't you? Like you can only do so much with what's available, and the Eels might.
And there's not much available.
No,
right now,
that's the thing is that the Eels have been aggressively exploring everything out there, and Josh Curran might end up just being the best guy to sign on maybe a 1 or 2 year deal, and so you're not hardcore committed to him long term.
And circling back, I think that's a big part of the reason of the Pezet deal as well. Was like, hey, you got this cap space, you take what's on the market that can help improve your team, right? And Pezet's there, so coming back to Curran, like if you look at the off-contract players coming into next year, there's no one really. Everyone's been signed up, and then even if you're looking for the year after, you're not guaranteed to get anyone because you've got a new team coming into the NRL. So you're going to be fighting with a team that's got just more money to offer than anybody. So you kind of got to look what's out there when it's available and sometimes make it work.
Exactly. All right, quick hitters now. We'll try and power through it because it's closing on an hour and a half on the podcast, and we talk about captive clubs. Don't want a captive audience here, and keep them stuck to the stream on a Tuesday night. It was mentioned in the chat that Lachlan Ilias has been confirmed with the Gold Coast Titans, Luke, and that was one of a number of known/suspected player movements that we're just waiting to be officially ratified, alongside Ilias going to the Titans for a couple of years.
For corruption, what about Gordon Towers having involved in the Titans, working 360 at Brayford Nasta?
It's like Charlie Kelly on Always Sunny. He's like doing the Pepe Silvia, like all the threads going everywhere. This is what we talk about with conflicts of interest. That's how you get Lachlan Ilias to the Titans. But Ilias, goes to the Titans to presumably play alongside Campbell in the halves. But it would be funny if he ended up in reserve grade and then Brave starts he's been mistreated thing again. I have to wait and see on that one.
Comes over.
Oh my God! Imagine that would be the funniest memeing timeline. But alongside the Ilias news, Luca, we have official confirmation, and Craig and I spoke about this when it was expected but not announced. Dave Fafita joining the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and I believe Dave Miley going to Manly on the back of that. DCE semi-officially now confirmed with the Roosters. It looks like that's going to proceed ahead after months of speculation because the Roosters would not say a word. Alongside that, Griffin Neem has re-signed with the Cowboys, solid forward there. Cody Ramsey made official with the Roosters, a 2-year deal to be the backup fullback and also compete across other spots in the back line. And to the Dragons, old Dave Clemmer. They do love an older forward. And again, another viable destination for Ryan Madison if you can convince old Flanagan to take up another old forward. But that is most of the player transactions, and there is some stuff outside of that was small that I didn't put in. But like I said, a lot of this sort of known or suspected player movements becoming official ahead of the week 1 of the preseason.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many blockbuster movements there.
Yeah, the big one that isn't there is Ruben Garrick, as Peter Z points out in chat. Ruben Garrick, another player linked heavily to the Bears. I think someone was doing the rounds on socials, and I think Craig and I talked about it. The Eels might have some interest in Ruben Garrick. Certainly, if Zach Lomax were to move on, I think our interest in Ruben Garrick would ratchet up very fast. But he's a good player, gives you coverage across fullback, centre, and wing, but primarily centre, and also a very handy goal kicker. But yeah, he hasn't signed anywhere just yet, which is very interesting. Is he trying?
I think that's a smart decision for him as well.
Because
Bears coming out, and
I agree.
that, like you said, offers a lot of utility. I think he's a great early signing for a team that can kind of move him around as players come available.
Because he's still contracted for Manly next year, so he's not in a rush to get a deal. But he could very much be playing his way towards a nice payday on the Western Coast. And it could be, their goal kicker and just even like their fullback. Who knows?
I mean, that's what I was saying about Jake Averillo as well.
Because
he's a guy I think coming up for 2026. I love Parra to have a look at. He's one of those guys that just, does a bit of everything.
Can be your first choice centre, but also fill in a number of spots and do a great job.
And whether that's Perth, pick him up as a guy once again that you can pick up and worry about where he plays later, or Parra, a guy that play centre, wing, 5'8", fullback, and actually be a genuine starter in any one of those positions. I love guys like that. And you got to get injuries throughout the season, so those guys come in valuable.
So yeah, I think that let me just have a quick double check. I'll go check the lots of checks. I'll check the news just see if there's been anything. Very quickly, I'm not gonna waste much time on it, but Trent Merrin, former NRL player, has been arrested allegedly for stealing cryptocurrency in the vicinity of $100,000. Absolute goose.
Wait for CoffeeZilla to.
Yeah, Coffee, for those that follow the internet documentarians, CoffeeZilla doing his expose on the NRL anytime soon. And because he does love to follow a good crypto trail in terms of the drama. But that looks to be the biggest recent developments in the news. So beyond that, quick wrap up of the team list for the upcoming rep finals, barring the Australian game because I haven't put anything up there, as well as a recap of the weekend results. And I know that you weren't on top of all the results, so I'll just quickly go through them, Luca. But we mentioned for the Jillaroos, Parramatta's own Abbi Church starring. It was due to her try assist and her try with the Eels. Might as well just say the Eels. The Jillaroos ended up prevailing in a really tense game against the Kiwi Ferns. I certainly had the Jillaroos pegged as heavy favourites for a multi-try runaway victory, but they end up winning 10-4 in what will be a rematch of the final next week. So big game there from Abbi and a great game from the Kiwi Ferns. Very physical in this one. Love to see that. Going back to the other games in the Pacific Championships women's, the Tongan team, big surprise, 42-6, routing the PNG Orchids over in Santos National Football Stadium in Port Moresby. I thought that PNG were going to be pretty firm favourites here, but it was a 9-1 rout for the Tongans. Parramatta's Martha Mattielli bagging a Hattie, so well done to Martha on the back of her debut year as an Eel, having a great little representative run here for Tonga. And neither team qualifying for the final, unfortunately, because Australia and New Zealand kind of the big dogs when it comes to international football, but a great showing from the Tongans. Really, really impressive stuff. So that was the ladies there. Going over to the men's, and before I do that, have a quick look at chat. People expecting Mitchell Moses to be a name for Australia. Wouldn't be surprised. I think that Kevy's intimated that there will be some changes in the roster, so I expect guys like Bradman Best and Mitchell Moses and whatnot, and maybe Ethan Strange. I hope that Ethan Strange gets a run. Like, what's the point of taking him on the tour if you're not going to give him a chance to play?
Park him in centre. Or...
Yeah, exactly. You can park him in the centres
yeah.
or you know, whatever. Put him on the bench if you have to, but I'd like to see him start, honestly. So I do hope that they get a run. Obviously, if Mitchell Moses and the Fox, just please get through unscathed from this last game if you do play. We don't need that kind of setback. Neil asked about Dom Ferrugia. Yeah, my understanding it was announced by Talking Parra, Neil, that Dom's been released. Unfortunate to not see a young Eel kick on, but he'll land at another club very quickly. Michael asking, do we have any wingers coming through? I've mentioned on the podcast, Michael, it's our biggest blind spot in the junior development. I don't know why. It's not like we do anything wrong explicitly, but we don't have like an out-and-out star wing coming through. There are some interesting prospects. I don't know if you guys saw Larima Rokasuka playing flag last season. Oh, my God. Larima is a little bit rocks or diamonds right now in his play style, but he's a fantastic athlete on the right wing and did some awesome things in the Jersey flag after graduating from SG Ball. Nathan Howitt's another pretty handy backline player. Hasn't nailed down a position in the backline because he's been so flexible. He's played fullback, wing, centre. So he could be another player, but I probably think he projects more to the centres. But I do like Larima and hope he can kick on this year, this coming season, this year. Oh, my God, whatever. And then, Cyrus Bloomfield, another player that, what's his position? Neil mentions him there. Started as a fullback in Harold Matts, converted to centre this year. Could easily kick to wing or back to fullback. He's got a lot of physical upside. And like you said, Neil has looked great in Union. And he's not the only Eel there. We mentioned in the podcast last time, but there's a number of long-term contracted Eels doing great things in Union right now. And the Eels don't tend to hold players back from playing Union. They don't want to inhibit their school experience as well as their football experience. And in general, it hasn't really hurt them, and I hope that doesn't hurt them here as well. Some criticism of Nathan Cleary. Yeah, I think he looked pretty ordinary. I think that the Roos in general look pretty ordinary in this tour. But Cleary's done maybe not even the bare minimum, but he's still gotten plenty of praise because that's how it works with Australia. I think that Moses could have easily done a better job. Yes, he was on the wing and Rosati was fullback, correct, yeah. And there's another young star in the Union and Parra Pathways, CU, who's definitely one to watch in the Harold Matts this coming season. So the Eels got a lot of good things happening cross-code here. And I think for the most part, they're on top of all of them in terms of their contract status too. But back to the international fixtures, Luca. We talked about the women's games, so let's go over to the men's, where talking about upsets. It was the opposite. Tonga got PNG in the ladies, but PNG got the Fiji Bati in the men's. 8 tries to 4, and it wasn't even close.
I think some consolation tries at the end there.
There was a 58th and 76-minute consolation try, yes, that really made the score look better. In fact, Fiji's only player worth feeding in that entire contest was Parramatta's Kithioni Katonga, who scored the first 2 tries when the game was actually still a contest for Fiji and was battling hard the entire game to try and keep the Fiji team in it. But it closes out a brief but good bounce-back series of games for Katonga after that syndesmosis injury sustained against the Panthers way back. But for PNG, what a celebration they've rounded their year. Young Cooper Bai getting his maiden international try. Crowd went wild for that one. But you just had a procession of tries. I think it was all unique try scorers. I think there was a double there. Yeah, I don't think anyone doubled up. And Reece Martin was a sharpshooter off the tee. 8 conversions and a penalty goal, not missing any. So great result for PNG. The crowd were losing their minds on this one. And the NRL obviously need PNG to accelerate their development, both as fans and in the football product, and good step forwards here. And then in the main game, the one that had all the pre-game drama, Tonga needed to win in this game by 17 or 18 more conventionally to proceed to the final. They were just completely outclassed in a gulf of class between them and the Kiwis. Went down 40-14, Luca, including that consolation try to Tupou in the 75th minute to make it from 40 to 8 to 40
disappointed in Tonga this
Agreed.
series, to be honest.
Agreed.
Like,
They were the first team to really make that jump to bridge Tier 1 and Tier 2, but they've since been overtaken by Samoa massively. And for New Zealand, Dylan Brown looked electric. He's played some fantastic football and might be the front runner for the Golden Boot, honestly. He's been really good for the Kiwis. Has a 6 on his back, but has probably played the 7 more conventionally to Kieran Foran. And it's just popped up everywhere for the Kiwis and been really, really good. And I've been joking to you that the Nova Castrians need to convince the NRL to change their colours from red and blue to just black, because they want this kind of Dylan Brown.
The alternate Brisbane strip.
Yeah, exactly. They need the mental health Brisbane strip. Yeah,
I think the international game just suits his style, right?
Like, I agree.
Everything, when you don't spend a lot of time, there's no complex gameplay.
Everything is stripped back at the international level. It's just like more streamlined, more basic football, or more simplistic football. And Dylan's really good at the fundamental stuff like that.
Yeah, and for a guy of like his talents as well, his physical talent, like he's a run first guy and he's an incredible ball runner. So I think that could be a key thing for when they get to him to Newcastle's. Hey, you just got to keep it really simple for Dylan.
Yeah,
which is the opposite of what you want out of a halfback. But it's my opinions. I don't really see Dylan as a halfback as a 5'8". But I think it's maybe something they could take out of it to hopefully. I still love to see the best of Dylan, even though it's not with the Eels anymore.
And I agree. I've said on the podcast, I've got so much time for Dylan, having seen him come through as a 14, 15-year-old out on the Central Coast playing his first game for the Eels, and then all the way through to his NRL debut and beyond. For the Eels in this game, Luca, I believe that Penisini and Katoa, Yongi got through relatively unscathed. Bit of a mixed bag for both of them. I think Will did more good than bad, but Tonga were getting beaten so comprehensively across the park that it's sort of a moot point. I don't really know why they picked Hopgood at fullback and Iongi in the halves. I think that they would have been better served by Iongi at fullback and then just finding someone to play 6. And that's not a knock on Lehigh, but Iongi is the established fullback between the two. And Manly sort of ummed about whether Lehigh should be their fullback for a brief period before putting Tom back there. Neil saying Will was solid, Iongi proving he belongs at fullback. Yeah, and you know what, Neil? As much as I would have loved Iongi to carve up at the 6, part of me is happy that we don't have to deal with the stupid argument that should Iongi be 6. From not so much not from you guys, but you know that there would have been a vocal segment, the Parramatta fan base, that would have been, oh my God, we need to put Iongi to 6. Like, screw Talatina, screw Fletcher, screw Papa Lee, screw all of them. Let's get Iongi to number 6. And we'd have to deal with that. Like, he can go back to playing fullback without any other concerns other than looking after the fullback. People giving Dearden some love. I know you're a big fan of Dearden, Jonka, so am I, but you've been a big proponent now whenever we watch football about how good Tommy is for both the Cowboys and for the Cane Toads. I think Moses Dearden is just an ideal pairing. And I know they weren't like lights out last year for Australia, but they kept winning for Australia last year and they were the incumbents. So a part of me is surprised that they weren't given the chance to start against the English.
It's got complementary football, right? Like they got clearly defined roles, and I think Dien's running game, is that really intense kind of wide running ball runner. Moses' kicking game, and more commanding leadership role he's really taken on the last few years. So yeah,
agreed. Neil also asked, "Is a young CSU in relation to Jerry?" Which is, I said the same thing, Neil. I don't know. That's something I have to take on notice, and if I get a chance to ask the right people at the Eels, I'll try and get clarification on that, because CSU is not exactly a common surname, and there is a bit of that NRL. There is a former NRL pedigree there, but I have to get that one there. Chris Hill saying that he thought that Munster took control and Cleary never came into the game. I think that's right. I just think that the Kangaroos in general, they've been, I don't know if you guys stayed up for the games. I made the mistake of staying up for the game on both accounts. Well, second game, my dog woke me up. So I said, stuff it, I'll watch the first half. They were bludgers. Like that is the most ordinary Australia's looked. I don't know if it's because I went to England. I don't know if it's Kevy hasn't gotten a good grip on the squad. But it was rough football. And yeah, the Roos, I don't know. Everyone's just like, Mark Nwang'anitawaze couldn't do a thing wrong in the regular season. He can't do a thing right for the Roos. Like every little cute play he tries to pull off is just being a disaster. And we know that he's better than that, but everything's gone wrong. It is funny when you frame it like that, isn't it, Neil? Like you can't see the son of a winger being like a star spine player, but then you also got Marcus Bye's son, who was a winger, being a dynamic lock forward and edge player. So yeah, sometimes the second generation, the apple does fall a long way from the tree, even if it's in the same code. It's funny. So
sometimes in the same generation, Ryder, right, coming up,
exactly.
And,
Ryder and Blaze and Kaiser and Frank. Yeah, there's some funny fraternal connections at Parramatta, let alone in the NRL. Yes, Ryder looks like Blaze was eaten by another Blaze in terms of size. He's an absolute monster, and he's getting bigger on a monthly basis. And like they do look like brothers, but physically they couldn't be more like separate. So. Ryder definitely a player to having a little black book, ladies and gents. He's was a super impressive prospect for the Eels this year, and I'm really keen to see what he can do coming into not even his physical prime next year, but as he continues to grow and evolve. But on that note, Luca, the only other thing really to talk about are the team lists, and I don't think there's anything. Where is I have a tab that had the team lists. What have I done with it? Oh, there it is. The only thing to note is poor Abbi Church goes from player of the match to reserve for the Jillaroos because Tamika Upton's back, and that back line is so loaded that they can't squeeze her into the wing or onto the bench. That's tough sledding, mate, to go from player of the match to being surplus to requirements, but that is the Jillaroos, isn't it? Just the most ridiculous team they've assembled. So that's the biggest Parramatta news there for the Jillaroos and the Kiwi Ferns. And going down to Kiwi Davis also out, which is probably pertinent to the Eels. But then going down to the other game, Junior Barlaw named at lock forward for Samoa. No surprises there. I believe that is the only Eel in the squad because obviously former Eel Blaze Talangi's there, but not a current Eel. And for the Kiwis, Dylan Brown, 6, again a former Eel. Isaiah Papali'i, former Eel. Looks like that's about. I don't think there's any major changes for the two teams. So, Junior named at lock forward for Samoa as they look to upset the Kiwis and claim the Pacific Championship. And I will probably be backing Samoa in this one, just like from a sentimental perspective. Got the current Parramatta Eel advantage, and they're also the big underdogs.
Hard to disagree with that. Likewise.
Yeah. And those games take place. Is it Saturday, Sunday? No, it's just Sunday. So. It's a doubleheader out at CommBank Stadium. 1:35 p.m. kickoff for the ladies and 4:05 kickoff for the men. So if you've got a chance to get out there, the atmosphere will be absolutely next level, you've got to imagine. But go Toa Samoa and I suppose go to Jillaroos. But I wouldn't be upset if the Kiwi Ferns upset the Jillaroos. I think that wouldn't be terrible for the game either.
Having competitiveness in it. I think it's a bit of golf for talent, unfortunately, though.
Yeah, I know it was a close game on the weekend, but I think historically when the Jillaroos have had a close game against the Kiwis, they back it up with a pretty comprehensive beating. So have to wait and see how it goes. Victor says hello. Hey, good to see you, mate. You've caught us at the back end of the podcast. We're about to wrap up, but good to have you on board, mate. And you can obviously go back and live rewind the podcast. And once we've finished the live part of it, it will go to VOD as well, so you can catch it on demand. But thank you for coming in, mate. Much appreciate your presence. John Rich asks, can we see Junior at lock for the Eels next year? This has been a subject of a bit of discussion among fans, Luca. Junior in that stripped-down frame has played some big minutes for Samoa and been a great presence for them, both offensively and defensively. Does he come into the mix for the Eels in a similar capacity? And it's kind of interesting because even at prop, he probably has a similar role for the Eels, but there is some differentiation between lock and prop. Do you think he stays as an 8 or 10 for the Eels, or will he go into the 13, given that we've got Jack DeBellin coming on board, plus a number of the other young guys like Sam Tuivasa and Luca Moretti looking to shore up their positions in the front row?
It's as you say, I think, he's got to keep the 8 or 10 on his back because that's probably his traditional role in the team, but he kind of already fulfills that role to a degree, doesn't he, where he plays as that almost a 5'8" at times, like in a halfback, rather than a lock, the link man in the spine. So I don't think they really need to put a number on it. I think he already is kind of doing that. I think also looking at Ryles, he's really kind of embraced that hybrid mindset, like even Hopgood moving into the forwards, right, but still kind of doing that ball playing. Like I think he's just an element of the game where everyone needs to do a bit of everything these days.
Yeah, and especially in the I know you don't like Ted Lasso, but we joke about that, but the brand of football the Eels are playing is almost like in the show they talk about total football, that Dutch brand of football, going back to the World Cup of yore, and you talk about players being able to do everything, like not everything, but everything with a little E rather than a big E.
Yeah, well, as the sport gets more professional, I think there's no excuse as a professional rugby league player. You have to be good passing.
And for the longest time, that is what separated the All Blacks from the rest of the world in rugby union, is that they would have a backline movement. You'd find the hooker or the prop playing outside centre, and he could rip it to a second rower on the wing, and the second rower could finish in the corner because of that. Yeah. The cohesive, holistic, all football sort of methodology. And I think that
this is right across the park, right?
Yeah, exactly. Left to right, right to left.
At the moment is a phenomenal finisher.
Yep.
Like you take the worst finisher in the rugby league right now, and you take him 15 years ago, and they look like an absolute freak of the put downs, even with the different rules. Like
exactly. Yeah, even with allowing for the corner post back then. Yeah. The finishes these days, like I said, average wingers are just insane finishes. I think that Junior probably just trends to being a number 8 or whatever. I think is he a number? What's his usual number? Is it number 10? Because he's always worn it, even when Reg was here.
I think so.
Actually, I'll just double check this very quickly.
I think Hopgood was wearing the 8s in the year.
Yeah, let's check here.
They're both playing.
Junior was the 10, correct? Yeah. So I think that Junior probably just profiles the 10, and as I seen chat, Peter Zed sort of are boldly exclaiming that surely Dylan Walker is lock wrapped up. And yeah, whether he's starting off the bench, I think Dylan will be your primary number 13.
I do think Dylan's not young though, and you should be looking for a succession.
Absolutely, there should be succession planning. Absolutely, yeah. But Walker probably still has a few years left to play. But like you said, you can't take that for granted, and you certainly want.
And he might remove back to be more like a 30-40 minute player.
Exactly. His minutes will start trending downwards. But yeah, the one thing that's really impressive with Walker, and you hear like all the players and the coaching staff talk about it, is how cerebral he is as a player, and how he's like having extra halfback out there, and that's certainly a premium to have a lock forward. So it's been a great pickup for the Eels, and like we said, probably deservedly the presumptive number 13, whether it's starting or off the bench. But yeah, we got I think probably good enough places ever to wrap up the podcast. We've gone an hour and 48. We still managed to yap. I'm sorry, guys. John Rich wants Guymer getting time at lock. Yeah, I think Guymer is part of that succession plan, John. I think that'll be where they try and push him to maybe learn and evolve. But yeah, we have to wait and see how, because it's all about the upstairs as much as anything. And Guymer's got a background in the halves and centres, not too dissimilar from Walker, although Walker was obviously a far more dynamic back prospect than Guymer, but they might have a similar processing power. So that'll be the challenge for Charlie, is taking on that cerebral element of the lock forward role. Victor, quickly as we wrap up, asks why is Hopgood back early, back training so early for the youngsters? I think he's just hungry, Victor. I think he's just really hungry. I think that is just a positive sign that he's there to rip in and lead the way. Obviously he had his struggles at lock forward this year, but when he converted the prop, he really just found his home. And I think that's going to inspire him to have a big preseason and be a front runner in the preseason too. So, yeah, Neil, there's a bit of bookkeeping to do for the Parramatta Eels, a bit of housekeeping to do for those guys. But I believe Charlie is, eligible for negotiation elsewhere. So, still contracted the Eels, of course, but one of those players I have to find a way to juggle with all those young guys and prospective external recruits. And yes, working on his hands too. Exactly, Chris. There's a lot that goes into a role like that. But ladies and gents, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in to just myself and my brother yapping on about the Parramatta Eels. Of course, as I mentioned at the start or the top of the show, all our thoughts and prayers with Craig and his lovely mum, Noreen, who is in the wars right now. Hopefully the big fella can come on sometime soon. But in his absence, we continue to soldier on both as the tip sheet and as fans of the blue and gold, and that's how he would want it. He expressly asked me to go on with the podcast today, when certainly respecting his wishes there. And on that note, the preseason has begun, so we've got more and more to talk about. It's very exciting times, and as those players trickle back in from the mandated time off, we'll see that squad really take shape under Ryles in year 2. And obviously there's some signings to happen. We have to wait and see how that plays out. Who knows? But it's going to be a blast. I'm super keen to see what Ryles can do in the run to Christmas and then beyond that into the season proper. We're going to have the announcement of our junior rep squads. At some point, we'll get a Jersey Flag squad too to talk about. So there's a lot happening. And it's going to be really, really fun to discuss it with you on a weekly basis. So on behalf of Craig and on behalf of my brother, thank you for tuning in. Luca, great job coming in on short notice. Thank you, mate. And we might get you back on the future. Chat seems to be pretty happy with the effort. But ladies and gents, I'll give a quick shout out to the sponsors, Parramatta Leagues Club and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta. As I always say, incredible sponsors of the show, of TCT, of myself and 60s. And on that note, I'll catch you guys in the next episode.